Welcome to I Need More Storage, Part 2. This is a Unify UNAS Pro with 7 3.5-inch drive bays. In a previous video, I went over my home lab storage situation. I've got a Dell R510 running TrueNAS, I've got a pool in there, and it's in a degraded state. One of the drives is going bad. Also, I'm running out of space, and my backup story is essentially non-existent. But there were two big things holding me back from putting this in service in the previous video. One was I didn't have all the drives. I've got one 12 terabyte drive here. I didn't have all the rest to fill it. I have since resolved that situation. 7 12 terabyte drives. I also have an electrical issue in the other room. There we go. So the drives are taken care of, but we need to talk about powering that rack in a different way. We're going to solve the power issue, get a bunch of drives in this thing. One of them's going to do us dirty. And finally get all my crap backed up. Let's get into it. First, let's go in the server room and I'll show you what's going on with the electrical situation. This is my home lab rack. Everything you see here is being powered off of a single 15 amp circuit. This one right here. This is the beginning of the circuit. It comes directly out of the sub panel. I believe it is, you can't quite see it. It's a Romex wire just above this one going into this box. It's got a GFCI protected outlet on it. You know, the ones with the buttons that you'd see in like a bathroom, because we're in a basement. And in my experience, what happens is if I plug in anything non-trivial, it aggravates that GFCI for some reason and trips it. So if I plug in another piece of large equipment to this circuit, the whole rack goes down. Now, in terms of keeping the storage safe, that's not too bad. So both of these servers are the only thing plugged into this UPS backup. Again, everything's on that same 15 amp circuit. And it looks like, let's see how many watts we're pulling. That'll be relevant later. Servers are pulling about 240 watts. It can power these servers for about 20 minutes as they're sitting here, which is totally fine. The power rarely goes out longer than that. But all this turns off, and what I'm talking about is I'll plug something into experiment and I accidentally cut power to the whole rack, and I have that new beefy NAS I want to bring in here, and it's going to pull a certain amount of amps, and I want to be set up for success. So this is something called a kilowatt. Everything you just saw is flowing through this 15 amp power strip. To be fair, the camera I'm recording this on, as well as a light back there, that's going to have pretty negligible impact. This thing can show us how many amps we're drawing. So when the rack is just idling, doing its thing, powering all my PoE stuff, cameras, everything, 5.5 amps. When I power everything up, I noticed it can reach 7, 8 amps. And then something that was sort of horrifying to me personally, it idles at about 650 watts. About 240, 250 of it were the two servers. So yeah, you can do the math for your area. Figure out what that is every month. So the game plan here is we're going to get 20 amp, 120 volt service put in here. Now you might be wondering, what's up with this big guy? This one is 240 volt service. It powers that other rack way over there called the retro rack. All the stuff in there runs on 240 volts. I have a PDU in the back that's plugged into that 240 volt outlet I was just showing you. And yeah, the driver behind that project is that massive P5 server on the ground. That will only boot up on 240 volts. So the whole rack runs at 240. So I figured I should mention, all this stuff could also run at 240 volts, but I have a bunch of 120 volt PDUs. As you'll see, those two I just plopped down on the desk in there. All the existing distribution I have is 120. So yeah, maybe someday we'll convert this to 240 if I buy new power gear, but I've got a bunch of 120 stuff. Don't think it's that big of a deal. I just want to get in a better current situation. 20 amp service. So you would think, given I have the sub panel right here, it should be as simple as pulling out the 15 amp service here, put a new breaker in, run the correct Romex to handle 20 amps, and you're done. But oh no. From here, this one branches off two directions. Way over there to another outlet sitting at the end of the run. And then it branches out into this guy right here. So the outlet's up here, branches to the outlet I was just showing you. And then to here, rolls up here and goes off and does something. So basically not practical to replace it with 20 amps. I would have to pull all that line and figure out where that one's going. So what I want to do is get a new 20 amp outlet, maybe right here or something. First though, I'm kind of surprised that we're only sitting around 5.5 amps. I want to know what's pissing this off. So I was saying I put a non-trivial device like a server in. All I do is power it on and it'll flip this GFCI. My money's on inrush current. I did a bunch of research on forums with electricians posting. Not everyone buys that. It seems odd that that would flip a GFCI. Anyway, let's try to recreate it. I don't know if I've ever done it on camera, so you guys know I'm not crazy. Of course, it won't happen now, but let me go get a server that I know pisses this thing off every time. This little guy, a Sunfire V120. The electrical rating is just for 2 amps. That would leave us well under the 15 amps this circuit can theoretically provide, which is odd. I think I've got everything set up here. This is plugged in to the same power strip. And let's see, we're on amps, 5.5 amps, everything's cool. Every time I've plugged this in before, over the past couple years using it, it trips this GFCI pretty much instantly. Now, some people are going to say, well, something's wrong with this thing. I've plugged this into many other circuits that are very, very much towards their limit of what they could even be running, and it's never caused a problem. And there's also been other items. I've plugged in Cisco routers, a couple other things that have the same exact behavior. So what's going to happen here is nothing might happen, and I might have to power this on or something. Or it will trip it, and then the servers will stay on, but the UPS will start complaining, and I will rapidly pull this out, reset the circuit, and my whole network will go down. That light that's to the right will go down. So let's see what we get. Let's prove I'm not crazy. I'm going to plug this thing in, and then I'm going to power it on. What? Why is it fine now? This is actually very, very interesting. To me, anyway. Happily pulling 6 amps. Which, again, is totally acceptable for this outlet. It's a 15 amp circuit. What's up with that? This is maybe the 4th or 5th time I've plugged this in over the past 6 months, and every single time except for this one, it's flipped the circuit. Should we try it again, just for good luck? It's completely fine. Here's a good one for you. Turn this off. I was trying it a few more times, and it did happen. Except my camera was plugged into this circuit as well. So the footage got corrupt. I'm like speechless. I don't know what's up with that. Should I try to plug something else in? How about a Total Control MP16? Totally fine. How about the server at the same time? There we go. Finally, caught it on camera. Okay, now the UPS is going to start complaining. The servers are still running. There we go. And then, of course, this is a GFCI outlet. Reset that. Plug my network back in. See, this is weird. Now all of this stuff's running again, and it didn't flip again. Very odd behavior. Maybe the GFCI is faulty? I don't know. I think my very scientific test setup here gave us inconclusive results. Glad you saw it at least once, though. I thought it was pretty... I'm kind of shocked by how inconsistent it is. And notice, plugging this in flipped it. All I did was pull this, put it back in, and both of these things started back up and it didn't flip again. So maybe it's a GFCI, maybe that outlet just needs to be replaced. But regardless, even though we're not even close to our 15 amp limit, which actually I was happy to see, I do want to get 20 volt service in here with a special kind of receptacle. Let me go show you what the plan is. This is a pair of 20 amp, 120 volt triplet PDUs, meaning they've got a bunch of outlets on the back of them. It's a power distribution unit. I think earlier I said 20 volt service. Obviously I meant 120 volt, 20 amp service. That's what we want to drive for at least one of these things. Speaking of amps, you can see right there it says 20 amp max, but the sticker on the top clearly states they're rated for 16 amps. So that seems kind of disingenuous, but that's fine. You can plug a lower amp rated item into a 20 amp circuit, and if we were pulling more than 16 amps, something would be going wrong in there anyway. We've got 12 outlets on the back, which is really cool, and it's got this super awesome connector. But before I show you the connector, I got to tell a story about these A viewer named Mark reached out 2 years ago and said, hey, I got these for a project. Turns out I didn't need them. Looks like you could use them in the home lab rack. Do you want them? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. I'm busy this week, but I'll reach out next week. And I promptly forgot for months. And then I felt bad. I didn't want to be like, hey, is that free stuff still around? Anyway, almost 2 years to the day, he messaged me and said, hey, dude, I'm going to get rid of these. Do you want them or not? So I said, yes, I'm serious. And so I drove up. He was like 30 or 40 minutes north. We had coffee and met up and talked shop. So that was great. Huge thanks to him. And he also included some new old stock receptacles. A couple of these Hubble branded twist lock 20 amp receptacles, which is pretty sweet. I think he said they were new old stock. They kind of look like it. They're pretty serious. Anyway, they're safe to use, of course. They're all rated and listed and all that. So the idea here is that the connector can only go in one way. It's keyed. Then it locks ever so slightly when you turn it to the right, and you can't pull it out. That would be pretty common in industrial and data center applications, so I think that's going to be pretty sweet to have in there. Pretty satisfying hearing that locking click. I was going to put both in, two 20 amp lines, but I have since, after reading the kilowatt, decided that's complete overkill for my situation. So I'm going to put one of them in, but it requires a little extra gear. So I got what we're going to need here. Oh, I should mention, if at any point in this video you get the impression that I'm going to do this, obviously my electrician's going to do it, and obviously we pulled permits. I'm not going to do it. With that out of the way, some 12-2 Romex, rated for 20 amps. I've had this for 3 or 4 years. Spool of it, haven't gotten through it yet. Got a 1-gang box, old work style box. We'll talk about that in a second. Put my outlet in. And then this is unfortunate. There's 2 standard sizes of these single hole deals, as far as I could tell. And these Hubbles don't match either of them. These are exactly 1.5 inches in diameter, and I can't find a plate like that, so I don't know if that's because they're old or something, so we'll have to solve that in the future. And then I got a GFI breaker. So this does the ground fault interrupt at the breaker. And I know I kept ranting and raving about current amounts, you know, amp limits and stuff, even though it was my GFCI that was going and flipping. They serve sort of different purposes. So the GFCI is flipping because it thinks there's like a ground fault, like a human is in the circuit or something. So I don't know if that thing's just going faulty or what. Anyway, my electrician said because it's a basement, I better get this. Might be better if it was arc fault, but I almost didn't even buy this. This was $70 US. Just so you know. Again, this is not electrical advice. Also, I'm not converting any of this to whatever happens outside of North America. I'm sorry, my European friends. This is going to be a very North American-centric informational video. So I got an old work 1-gang box. They call the number of items you can fit in it determine its gang. So you can imagine there was 2 of these, no middle part, that'd be a 2-gang and so on. They're basically divided into 2 broad types, old work, new work. New work's going to have the nails, so you could pound this into the stud. The electrician would come along before the drywall showed up. Now technically I could use this, as you saw. I'm on an unfinished side of the wall and I can still see my studs. I don't really like to do that because as you're hammering this in, you're going to just cause a lot of stress on those on the drywall and the screws holding it on. And so when I'm in this situation, when my electrician's in this situation, go with one of these old work style boxes and I can just screw it right into the stud, not cause any trauma for the drywall. Good news, the electrical inspector's here. Better get to work. I will come back and show you the finished product. It is in. Decided to put it back over there. Bummer about the cover. I got to solve that problem ASAP. Inspector was not impressed. But as you can hopefully see, one of the PDUs is plugged in, working just fine. I think the game plan is I'm going to mount this on the back of the rack. Everything except the UPS will be plugged into it, though I could plug the UPS in, just for the fun of keeping things on 2 circuits. The UPS and therefore the servers will be plugged into the original 15 amp. I got that outlet over there on that circuit. So I'm going to do all that, and then finally we will rack the UNAS right here for now. Yes. Quick note. The breaker I was showing you earlier was not the right one for this panel, physically. Just wanted to call that out. So, the correct one is in there now, I can assure you. The network's coming back online. Everything except the UPS down there is on our 20 amp service. And then we're going to put the UNAS Pro right here. But let me show you the power situation. We'll leave the servers off until we're done mounting the UNAS because they're so loud. Got it racked towards the bottom for now. I'm sure this will change. And shows 2 amps for the network. Interesting. A lot of PoE going on. And then there's 2 other things plugged into it. Another PDU that I already had. One little switch. This PDU is plugged into it. This was the main PDU for the rack until now. I liked having this front thing. It's nice to have spots to plug stuff in while I'm experimenting. However, as you can hopefully see, that's the back of the PDU and it's totally maxed out. I don't have any more space to plug stuff in. This is the UPS right here. And now I've just got so many spots. Very exciting. Okay, let's get that UNAS Pro ready to rack up. This, of course, is a disaster. That's not the goal of the video. The video was to get power so I can get the UNAS and start backing up my crap. First things first, install these rack ears on each side. It came with them, of course. They anticipate probably that you're gonna rack this thing up. However, it does come with rubber feet if you wanted to put it on a bench. I'll get both of these on. And then we will not put any hard drives in until I rack it up to save on weight. It's already quite heavy on its own. It's kind of funny. I've got 2 different types of drives. I got 3 of these refurbished Dells and the rest are iron woofs. And in the other video when I was experimenting, I threw an iron woof in there. And someone said, if you don't put the 3 Dells on the top and the 4 on the bottom, you know, because it's 3 and 4 in the arrangement, that was going to make them really uncomfortable. So I will comply. That stuff doesn't usually bother me, but I get it. I'll do it. So we'll pull this one out, and you can watch me put the Dells on the top later. Rack time, I think. I also have a 10 gig Ethernet aggregation switch in that rack, and I want to get this connected at 10 gig. It uses these DAC cables. I have some. I can't find them, but we'll rack this up, and I'll find the right network cable. First, I'll get this blanking plate out of here. This was just for looks. And it's actually really going to do me a favor that I have something to lean that NAS on as I'm racking it up. That's going to be really nice. This is not where I want it long term. I want all the network stuff at the top. I don't like the idea visually that it's under these servers, but that is low priority. The number 1 priority is I need to back this stuff up to at least somewhere that's in the same room. I know I need a 3rd backup, a minimum, off-site. We will get there together, don't worry. But I don't feel like messing around with these servers. I'd have to re-rack everything. I'm just not doing that today. Let's put it in. It's pretty heavy, but I don't think it's going to be all that bad with the screw there. This is already dropping screws. This is already 10 times easier than things usually are. My hand around here. Come on. I think when I racked a bunch of this stuff up, I wasn't very good at it. Are these different? Jesus. Just trying to use the old cage nuts that are in there. But Ubiquiti uses a different size screw, bastards. Why would you go not industry standard? Anyway, so I got to pull all those cage nuts out and put these silver ones in from, came with the, oh my God. I do have rack studs, and I know I keep saying I'm going to use them in this modern home lab rack. But I used the silver screws on all the other Ubiquiti stuff. Got to uphold some standards. Is that also not going to go in? There we go. There we go. I swear it's usually easier. That cage nut fell out. That's cool. Maybe it is time for rack studs. This is maybe the most trouble I've ever had. There it is. How does this work? Okay. We are going to do this in the other room because, as I recall, it's a little finicky to get them in the trays, and it would be ideal to do that on the workbench. That's a lot of hard drives. I even put the retaining screw in each one because I actually care about the success of this project. Spent a lot of time and money to get this far. I started this project 2 years ago. Let's get these installed. Let's get these drives in here. Okay, I still can't find my DAC cables, so that would give us 10 gig connectivity, and I bought 2 of them in late January, and I can't find them, so that's unfortunate. in the spirit of forward progress, and at least being able to build the array, we'll get this plugged in. And now I'm going to go turn it on, which just means I'm going to crawl back here and plug it in because it doesn't have a power switch. My new breaker didn't flip. That's exciting. I can hear the drives making noise. We should be able to interact with this over the web interface once it's up. There's some drive lights. I like that. All of them are blinking. Let's get the big dogs back online. Beautiful. I gotta say, it looks really good. Like, really good. It's so cool having that there. Don't worry about that guy. Solve that later. It's about an hour or two after I plug that in, and so far, kind of not so good. It sees all the drives, but the first drive it says it's repairing, and one of them, disk 4, it doesn't like at all. It says disk failure detected, and it's got this notification in the upper right saying it's repairing the storage, whatever that means. So if we view storage details, this thing shows up constantly. I had originally set up a 12 terabyte pool because there was only one drive and I was just kind of kicking the tires. And I think this thing kind of got very excited. I added all the drives, and originally I had a drive in bay 1, HDD 1 is what this is calling. And I moved that one, obviously, because I was making that joke about 3 Dells and 4 Iron Wolves. So I think that might be what this repairing is about. It presumably had stored something on that drive to build the one drive array I had initially. The other drives are fine. So these are 2 Dells. We got some Iron Wolves over here. And then hard drive 4, it doesn't like at all. And it doesn't tell me what's wrong with it. It says drive failure detected. Doesn't say anything about what that drive failure was. But essentially what's happening is plugged in a bunch of drives, it got excited, and now it's rebuilding the pool with more drives. And I'm going to have 60 terabytes effectively with one drive I could lose. I kind of just want to reformat the whole thing. I don't know. In the current basic protection, I believe I'm getting a RAID 5. It's kind of weird. You don't get to choose. The more drives you have, the more RAID it will do. So I think I'm getting a RAID 5. I can lose one drive, which is fine. And like I was saying, it's been going for about an hour, and it thinks it's going to take 14, now 15 more hours. It doesn't know how long it's going to take. I'm kind of tempted to just hit her with the reformat. Act as if it was brand new. Let's see what happens. I think it's trying to save. Yeah, there we go. I think it's trying to save the existing setup, which I don't care about. I don't have any stuff on there. And then I'm not convinced that this hard drive 4 failure is not just the disk not being inserted properly or something, because this is a brand new Iron Wolf drive. I either bought it 2 or 3 years ago, or I bought it in the last 6 months. So I have a hard time believing it's failed, but we'll see what happens here. Erasing and preparing storage. Okay, so now it is no longer repairing HDD1. It is formatting all of them, but it still doesn't like 4. I am going to go run in there and I'm going to pull it out and put it back in. I'm not convinced there's something wrong with that. I wish I filmed it, but the LED was red. I pulled it out, reseated it, and Unify still thinks drive failure detected. So that means I was shipped brand new, either several years ago or recently, a bad drive. That's encouraging. I'm going to let this thing build itself, and I'll actually probably have to return that drive. That's ridiculously annoying. It's the next evening, about 22 hours later, and it's still got a lot of time to go. It's kind of waffling around 5 hours estimated, and I'm kind of regretting letting it build. Probably when I noticed this bad drive, I should have just kind of halted the whole operation until I got another one. We'll talk about the plans for that. I'm just going to let it finish, and unfortunately, when I get a good drive, I think it might do this whole thing over again. I'm not sure. I'm not too worried about the new drives. You can see this one, for example, only has 22 hours on it, but the refurbished Dells have something like 51,000 hours of runtime. Again, they're healthy, but I don't want to beat them up unnecessarily, but too late, I guess. I'm going to let this finish. So we'll definitely be back tomorrow. In the meantime, I think I can safely pull out this bad drive. Let's have a look at it. I technically have another 12 terabyte drive, but it's my current backup situation. So what we're looking at are all the drives on the Dell R720, the top server. And you can see I've got this SDC mounted, 10 terabytes available, but it is another of those Iron Wolf 12 terabyte drives. And occasionally, whenever I remember to do it, I come in here and run an rsync to back up from the NAS to that hard drive. And I haven't done it in a while because I made that DEC VT520 video a very long time ago. So you can see this is why I need a more automated setup with a larger disk pool. But the plan is, let's pull that bad 12 terabyte drive, put it in this machine, and see what's up. I'm going to turn this machine off for now while we play with the drives. Down in there we can see the bad drive 4 with the red indicator. This guy's off, and I need to refresh my memory on the hard drive situation. It's one of the reasons I turned it off. So this is a 250 gig SSD. That's a 500 gig SSD. Okay. 500 gig SSD. And another 500 gig SSD. So that might be the root drive, and these at least 3. Let's see what else we got. Another 500 gig SSD. We're swimming in SSDs. Whoa, another one. Do I even have room in this thing? Wouldn't that be funny? So that was 250 gigs, 5 2.5s, 2.5 terabytes so far. Here is the Iron Wolf, the 12 terabyte. And then I'm hoping nothing's in here, but that does not seem. What? Did I? Oh, I've had enough drives this entire time. I bet I raided them. This is really spicy. This is so classic. I had the 12 terabyte drives I needed the whole time, but I have these in a RAID 1, which means I can lose one of them without losing the data. Do I do it? This is so weird. I think I'm going to do it. Obviously, I have my one copy here, and then I can lose one of these drives and rebuild my backup, my partial backup I have. I'm going to sacrifice one of these drives from this RAID, and we're going to pop it in and see if it'll build properly. Ooh, this is exciting. I'm literally going to go in the other room and swap the sleds, and I'll label this one as bad, or supposedly bad, so I don't lose track. I'll be right back. Okay, this is the drive I just took out of there, which I didn't even know I owned. I'm having so much fun. I'm going to get a bunch of crap for doing this Wild West shit, but I'm home labbing, baby. Okay. We know this drive works. This bay better not be bad. Let's go see what it says in the UI. So before I could hit record, it briefly said this drive was fine. Showed all its information, said it had 10,000 hours on it, which actually is making me realize that 51,000 hours is like nothing, because I've given... Anyway, I'm kind of unimpressed. I think my theory still stands that there wasn't actually anything wrong with the other drive if it thinks a very obviously known good drive is bad, or I'm doing something. I wish I could like stop this from proceeding. I wonder if it's just confused because I've been pulling storage in and out. That was probably not the best idea. I'm gonna do a little reading. Also, this thing's been off for a month and I'm already like 2 minor versions behind. Come on. Here's something interesting. This is the drive I just put in the Unify that it said was bad. I didn't think of this before. This would have been a good test. Got it in this little SATA to USB, and it's humming away just fine. Sounds really good. Windows doesn't detect it, but that doesn't really surprise me. It's part of a RAID array, which might also be why Unify is getting confused, but check this out. Let that spin down. Here's the one the UNAS says is bad, and it probably is. Listen to this. Some terrible clicks, and then it spins itself down. I was shipped a garbage drive. Unfortunately, I open these boxes like a caveman, but we will make it work. It might be one of those deals where it says don't talk to Amazon if you have problems. I can't really remember. Anyway, Amazon will be hearing from me. I will definitely be returning this piece of crap. So this leaves me in a weird position. What should I do? I have disk management open. I've got the good disk back in my SATA to USB converter, and we see it. It's healthy. There's the 12 terabytes. It's got a few different partitions, of course. But yeah, this is a healthy disk. This thing's still got 4.5 hours left. My sneaking suspicion is that when I put it in position 4, it's seeing the old RAID information and getting confused. That's just a guess on my part. The other drive was definitely bad, so maybe it's a coincidence that it's complaining that this one is bad in the same slot. I'm really not sure. I think here's the move. I'm going to let this thing finish, and then rather than destroying my one backup, my RAID 1, even though it would have been fine, I think both disks have all the files. It's like totally cool. I'm going to let that array build, because last night when I thought I didn't have more 12 terabyte drives, I bought another one. This should be here tomorrow or the next day. It's another one of those Dell refurbished deals, so $290 later for that. But, you know, now I'll just be swimming in 12 terabyte backups. That's pretty nice, I guess. Long story short, I'm going to let this thing finish. And then, I know I'm waffling back and forth here. I might pop this guy in. And maybe once the array is built, it will be happy to accept any new drive. Or I'll wait for the new one, or I'll format this one. I'm not sure, because I have nothing else to do. I've got the bad disk plugged in. And disk management takes a long time to start up, and it's saying the disk needs to be initialized. You can see down here it does know it's a 12 terabyte disk. I wonder how many times I've said 12 gigs throughout this video. There's no way this is going to work. The disk like isn't even spinning. I'll be back. Request failed due to a fatal device hardware error. No surprise there. This one was manufactured March 30th, 2023. It's probably one of the older ones I bought. Dead on arrival. It's a good thing I bought the same thing a month ago, because I will be returning it in that packaging. Rip off. I've made a rash decision. I'm factory resetting the UNAS Pro because I was taking a closer look and it was 60 terabytes free, 12 terabyte of protection, which means it's building an array with 6 drives. It just ignored the bad one and kicked everything off. I had no choice in this matter, by the way. It just like built everything. So we're going to factory reset because in a RAID 5, this unfortunately can't do RAID 6, these disks are just going to get pounded and pounded as it builds this array. And some of them are already kind of old. So we're going to factory reset, start the whole process over with all good drives, and go from there. Check this out. Oh yeah, dude. If only it would, work. I'm gonna factory reset, well, I already factory reset it. I'm gonna get it all set up again. Hopefully it sees all 7 drives, likes them, lets me wipe them, and start all this over, and I'll be back in 24 hours. Getting there, making progress. Note that because I log in with my email, I don't think it's required to have an Ubiquiti account to set this up. It looked like I could have skipped that, but don't quote me on that. I use one. I could have actually immediately restored from a backup. It backs up to their cloud service. For better or worse, I'm not saying that's for everyone, but it is an option. The configuration, not the data, but the configuration of the appliance. If I come into setup storage, it just sits here like this and does nothing. Top tier enterprise product. Editing me here. This clip and maybe some after it, I haven't found out yet. My recording software was kind of crapping out. It was getting all the audio, but the stream from the desktop was really slow. I'm basically frozen. So what was happening here is I would go to the storage page and nothing. It was just totally blank. So I set up SSH and take a look on the console. Can't even get in and look at the drives. So this is pretty stupid and defeats the whole purpose of having a dedicated appliance like this that is supposed to be easy to use. I'm going to have to turn on SSH access. I'm SSH'd into the machine, and one of the top processes is MD3 RAID 5, which means even though I factory reset it, it's trying to resync the RAID, which is not what I want it to do. I want to be in control of what it's doing. I realize the irony in that I bought this device. Really making me rethink it. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to format all the drives, and then I'm going to put them back in and see what it thinks about that. pulled all the drives and restarted it, so no drives are in. And yeah, it sees storage pool 1. It must have gleaned that from the drives while they were sitting in there. And I don't want that. And you can't delete it. And if I try to make another storage pool, nothing happens. Wonder if there's a console error. Nope, no network activity. So what I was saying earlier, pretty sure I just need to wipe all the drives and put them back in. Some progress, finally. I wiped the very first drive on a Linux machine with a tool called wipefs. Popped it back in, all hot swapping and everything. I didn't restart this. It sees the hard drive, sees it's 12 terabytes. This storage pool is not kicking in. Oh, now, so with a drive inside, I get new options. Like, I don't think this menu was showing up on the right before. Yeah, I don't want this storage pool configuration. And I can't click the erase button. I don't know about this thing, guys. Oh, it makes you wait. It's just a weird UX. Okay, perfect. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to wipe each drive with wipefs. Takes like 2 seconds. I'll show you one. I'm going to get them all in here, make sure everything's healthy, and then I'm going to manually create a pool. So I think to this thing's credit, where I did myself dirty is I made a single drive pool, and then I came in hot with 6 more drives earlier in the video, and one of them was legitimately bad, so it skipped that one. I'll show you how I'm going to wipe the next drive, and then I'll do the rest, and we'll come back here. Feeling a little more hopeful now. Welcome to the Collab Retro Drive Wipe station. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm actually kind of having fun. Even though I shouldn't have to do all this stuff, but we're just home labbing, right? Power this drive on. Over in the terminal, we can do an LS block. And here is our 12 terabyte drive. It's got a few partitions. It's called SDB. So then we'll do a wipefs all dev SDB. Takes all of 10 milliseconds. LS block. No partitions. This disk is good to go. I'm going to do the rest. We've done it. All 7 drives are showing up in the UNAS Pro. 12 terabytes. All have an optimal health status. Now the question is, do I want to do a RAID 6 and help these drives out a little bit, or do I want to do a RAID 5? So let's see, I think it's going to do a little calculator here for me. In a RAID 6, I could lose 2 drives. I'll have 60 terabytes, of course. But a RAID 5 would give me 72 terabytes, and I think it's harder on the disks. With RAID 6, I'll have 60 terabytes. I can lose 2 drives. My current pool, which is ZFS, but sort of the equivalent of RAID 6, was a 20 terabyte pool, and I've only got 6 terabytes left. Oh, guess what, by the way? It thinks everything's fine, so since we restarted this machine, whatever disk was complaining is fine now. This has happened before, and like a month from now, it'll be in a degraded state. I'll wait till it gets in a degraded state, and I have a 4 terabyte disk that will pop in there, and it's going to rebuild this whole array. Resilver it? Is that what they call it? But I don't want to do that until I have a full backup on the UNAS, obviously. So I think what I'll do, I'm going to do RAID 6, 60 terabytes. I'm going to have triple the space of my current array, which is still going to be my working array. That's where I'm going to store the most of my stuff, and we'll do incremental backups. And to here, yeah, anyway, it's going to be a whole thing. They're going to reformat it, the drives. That's good. And now we wait for another 24 hours, probably. These poor drives. So the pool says formatting. The hard drives say initializing. Can I leave this and come back and see it? I can. It no longer gives a time estimate. They must have removed that. There was 2 minor releases of the software since the last one I was running. So they don't estimate anymore. I think this will take like 24 hours, potentially, because these are pretty big disks. I'll be back tomorrow, and hopefully we can put some data on this thing, and hopefully I find my DAC cables so we can do it at upwards of 10 gigs. Might take like 2 days for that array to build, so I'm going to start filming another video. You didn't think I was going to forget about the Turf Masters thing, did you? Check this thing out. It's a massive Nortel Networks Enterprise Edge 1000. If the hard drive gods treat me right, the video you're watching now will come out before the video on this one. But look forward to this, I guess. It's the next evening, about 18 hours later, since I started this storage pool build. Still says formatting. I would like to lodge some complaints. I don't like that it doesn't give me a time estimate. The old UI from 2 months ago did. Why'd they take that away? Am I in some weird state? This is the landing page of the UNAS Pro after you log in. It's telling you to add some storage. It's acting as if it's not building a pool. It should tell me it's building a pool right here. When I click Setup Storage, sure enough, it takes me to that page. This is like UX 101. Don't act like you're not getting set up when you're actively doing a very long-running thing, and then you don't tell me how long it's going to take. It could at least be providing an estimate. Remember I turned on SSH here? If we SSH into this thing, I always have liked their little ASCII art. Unify. All settle down. I like that. We can take a look at the proc mdstat file, and we can see it knows it's building this RAID 6. It knows it's 82.5% of the way done. The OS is predicting it's going to take another 377 minutes. Show me this in the UI. So that's going to take at least another 6 hours. And if I'm still up in 6 hours, something has gone terribly wrong. So I'll see you tomorrow. It's the next evening and it has finished. I set up something they call a drive that I can share over NFS. I called it UNAS. It's got access to the full 60 terabytes. Up here you can see we've got a RAID 6 fully operational and all the drives are at optimal health. If we go over into settings and go to services, I have enabled NFS. I'm going to mount this on the TrueNAS instance. We'll talk about how I'm going to back this stuff up shortly. It's a little cumbersome. I've added an NFS connection, so this allows my TrueNAS instance at that IP to mount with read-write. They're even nice enough to give us a little mount command example. And if I look at this thing, it's mounting what this thing refers to as a shared drive. That's that UNAS thing I set up. Long story short, I'm going to use rsync to get all my files off of the old NAS and onto this one, but I still haven't found my 10 gig DAC cables. But I did find a few of these. These are SFP Plus fiber modules. So both my aggregation switch and the UNAS Pro can accept modules like this. My DAC cable is basically just two of these connected together over a copper cable, direct attached copper. So I'm going to hopefully solve the same problem here with fiber. Found a few of them. You can see this one's labeled SRJUN, SRINT. SR stands for short range, so something like 300 meters or something. And the JUN stands for Juniper, as in the networking company. And INT, I believe, stands for Intel. This one says SO, but is clearly labeled Intel coded. So the vendors like to lock the ports to a particular firmware style. So pretty sure these Intel versions wouldn't work in Juniper gear. Only this one would, and this one might not work elsewhere. Now, Ubiquiti, to their credit, is pretty open, as I understand it. I've never had trouble with my DACs. I don't think I've tried fiber yet. So we're going to try these two Intel-coded ones, and then I've got some OM3 fiber cable here that is multi-mode. I think it's correct. Let's see. I think the deal. Take off the little protectors. And slide her in, right? Yep. Do the same thing on the other side. Why doesn't it fit? I got it. It's just a little tricky. So this is effectively my 10 gig Ethernet cable. We'll see if the Ubiquiti gear likes these modules. Here's the main 10 gig aggregation switch. I'm going to have 2 ports left after this, and I can never remember which direction these go. Not that direction. That's in, and because I'd like to tell myself this is temporary, I'm sure it's going to be this way for months, I'll shove it through the brush guard here, trying to make it look somewhat reasonable. Okay, then down here on the UNAS, let's see if we get a link light. Of course, I put it in upside down. That's promising. So that should get it yet another IP from the router. This will be .89. This will be something else that's auto-assigned. That's fine. Well, yeah, check that out. I'm looking at the IP addresses on the little front panel here. It'll display a bunch of information. Port 1 is .89, of course, and port 2 got .90. Perfect. No surprise, I can access it at .90 now, so the link is working. Let's go look at TrueNAS. So here we are, and yes, I know this is a very old version of TrueNAS. It might even be deprecated. I want a full backup before I start dicking around with it. That's the whole point of this video. So ideally, I would come in here and I could go to something like rsync tasks, and I could set up a recurring rsync from, my mount I care about to some remote host. I think I could do this, so I would set up like SSH keys on the NAS, the UNAS. So as you saw, I have SSH access, so I can kind of do whatever I want in there. I don't think it comes with rsync, so I'd have to install rsync. Again, also possible, but I was reading that if you update the OS, it might get rid of old stuff you've installed or whatever. And I found that it's not good to kind of stray from the path when you're dealing with these fully managed appliances. You're just going to have a bad time. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll be able to set up like a cron job to run whatever script I want. And I have obviously SSH access to this true NAS instance. I will mount the other NAS and I will manually run my own rsync. We're SSH'd into the true NAS instance, and in the mount directory we have my two pools. And if we go into, I think it's the data set, there's all my stuff. Here's all my YouTube videos, here's software, here's a SSH key. So the plan is, we're going to make another folder in here. So let's do make dir mount, and we'll call it UNAS. Now we have a spot to mount it. I haven't tried this yet, but I should be able to mount the NFS share I called UNAS on the UNAS Pro, clever naming here, into the folder we just made. Okay, and I don't really think there's anything in there. Let's make a file in there. Mount UNAS hello.txt. Okay. Back over in Windows, we're going to try to access the UNAS. I've made a user and password here. See if I typed that right. I did. So we have this UNAS share, and there is the file that I created from the TrueNAS mount. So let's save some changes to it. Uh-oh. Interesting. So we're going to have to deal with the whole root permission thing. So I don't have access to this file for write. Let me play around. I don't like that. Back on the TrueNAS, I'm giving everyone write access to that file. This is definitely something I'm going to have to solve, because when I rsync all this stuff over, I want everyone to have read-write access to this stuff. It's all my stuff in my local network. We don't need any fancy root permission stuff going on. Let's see if I can edit that file. I can now. And if we take a look, we can see my change. Pretty big experiments going on here. I'm going to go do a little research about what I should do about this permission stuff, but the basic idea is rsync is a tool that can copy things from one place to another, and it can do it in an incremental way. With manifests and stuff, it can do dry runs and tell you what it's going to do, and we'll be able to copy everything I want from my existing pools over to the UNAS on a regular cron. Messing around with permissions before I do a really big sync over to the new NAS. So I'm in Gemini 2 is my main storage pool that I'm most concerned with backing up. So I've got a bunch of stuff in here, and I've got a new hello.txt file, and over here in the UNAS share, I have a folder called Gemini 2. That's where I'm going to sync everything. And if I run this crazy ass rsync command where it's trying to strip permissions and everything and get that file over to Gemini 2, we can run that and you can see there it is. However, if we look at properties, security, everyone can read it. This Unify Drive NFS user has read-write. That must be the user on the UNAS. And the Unified Drive group has read. I want everyone to have read-write. So of course I can read it, but if I try to add stuff and save, it complains that I don't have permissions. So back over here, I'm just using the nuclear option and recursively giving everything in this folder very open permissions from the TrueNAS side. And if we go into properties after I've done that and check out security, now everyone does have read-write and execute. It's got everything. And I can successfully add stuff to this file. I can save it. And of course, if we look at it, I need to look at the one inside the UNAS. There it is. Okay, I think that's the game plan. So I'm going to try backing up my YouTube videos from Gemini 2 over to a new folder. We're in verbose mode, excuse me. And it works, but I've been playing around with this, and it's awfully slow. The UNAS is showing something like 100 megabytes per second. I'd rather see upwards of 300 or 400 with this spinning rust. Maybe it's just not going to be possible. That also sort of feels like we're getting capped at gigabit network speeds. I guess I'll mess around with that fiber link, see how fast it's really operating at. Oh, maybe it's because I accidentally mounted at 89 the last time I mounted this thing. Let's unmount. Let's mount again with this stuff. I don't even know if it's everything I want. Let's say 90 this time. And now let's start the rsync up. Now the nice thing about rsync is that even though I canceled it, it remembers everything it already did. It pays attention and makes sure it's not going to do more work than it needs to. So it's starting off right where it left off. Not really much of an improvement though. 120 megabytes per second. Okay. I'm going to go mess around. Well, I know I have a 10 gig link on the TrueNAS machine, and I'm here on the UNAS Pro, and this is the second interface, ENP0S2. And if we use ETH-tool and grep for speed, it thinks it's 10 gig. So I don't know if it's just a spinning rust hard drive issue. When I transfer files from this machine over SMB at 10 gig, I can see upwards of 400 megabytes per second transfer speeds. I've never reached the full 10 gig. I think it's a combination of how I've got the network set up, but mostly just the fact that these are hard drives. And you can see there it's below 100 megabytes per second, so it's just going to take forever. That's fine. At least I'm going to have a backup. So that's ironic. I made a YouTube video about upgrading to a 10 gig network in 2023, and that's the one it's transferring now. How poetic. Well, we did it. I've got that backup running in a Tmux pane so I can close the session and it'll continue on in the background. Let me know what you think about that 100 megabytes per second speed. I'd like it to be faster, so hopefully there's something I can do about that. Also, my huge permissions headache that I'm solving with a sledgehammer. Let me know what you think about that as well. I say we've finally done it, but we've only just begun. So I'm running a version of TrueNAS Core that is effectively deprecated. I want to rebuild that whole NAS, probably actually replace it with a faster, more efficient, well, speed isn't really an issue, but a more efficient machine with a larger pool. This is way down the line. And then we've only just begun because, yeah, after the sync takes place, I'll have a full backup, but both of them are on-prem. I really need an off-site third backup. I'm thinking I'll do that at my mom's house. She lives about 30 minutes away, so maybe use the Dell R510 after we upgrade it, if I replace it with something else, and do a full sync here, drive it to my mom's, and then sync over the net every night or something. I don't know. Lots of options there. Let me know if you like these more modern home lab style videos. These are really just infrastructure videos. I need that modern rack to be up and backed up and doing well so that I can make the real quote-unquote videos about stuff like this Nortel Networks beast over here. I know a lot of you are here for the older gear, the mid-90s to mid-2000s, you know, network and enterprise machines and stuff. And that's the bread and butter of the channel, I should say. I like that stuff the most too, but I've got a million videos I could make about just more modern home lab stuff and like how I edit videos and stuff. So let me know if you'd be interested in that at all. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. We just passed 70,000 subscribers and we're on the road to 100,000. If you'd really like to support the channel and help me buy all this crap, I'm on Patreon. I post behind the scenes type videos, the occasional early release, and you get access to the Serial Port Discord, which I hang out in all the time. If you made it this far, what are you doing? I'll catch you in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching.